Thanks for listening to PoliticalStorm.com. I'm John Small. We have a special guest today, Fred Lucas. He is a White House correspondent with the Daily Signal, and he's the author of a book, and the book is called Tainted by Suspicion, and you can see the book and learn more about it at taintedbysuspicion.com. But on the phone with us right now, we have Fred Lucas. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to visit with you here. What is it like being a White House correspondent? That's got to be pretty exciting.
Oh, yeah. It has its moments. Particularly if breaking news happens, when the president has to come out and make an announcement, folks have to be there, but there are downtimes as well, as with anything. But it's a pretty nice gig.
So, how long have you been working on the book Tainted by Suspicion? And I like the secondary headline here: "The Secret Deals and Electoral Chaos of Disrupted Presidential Elections." So this is a pretty insightful book. How long did it take to put this together, and when did you start on this?
It took about a year, and just want to mention the title itself, "Tainted by Suspicion." That came from what President Grant said about the 1876 election, that basically either party can afford to not have their candidate win, but what the country can't afford is to have an election result tainted by suspicion. And I took that as a title, and the book looks at some elections that were very suspect. What the best frame of reference for most people is the election of 2000, when you had the hanging Chad and so forth in Florida. But also we had similar incidents in 1876, 1824, and even 1800, the year Thomas Jefferson won. That was the biggest oddity, which was an electoral college tie between Thomas Jefferson and his running mate, Aaron Burr.
Yeah, and then the person that cast the deciding vote was Alexander Hamilton, and then Aaron Burr shot him. That's not quite how politics go today.
Right. I mean, people talk about politics being polarized each day. They weren't looking at it back then.
Yeah, taking a couple of paces and shooting at each other. That's a whole lot different.
Right.
And it's interesting that the elections that you mentioned, now I'll have to look into 1876. I don't remember that, but 1824, I remember in 2000 when all of this stuff was going on, and they were talking about how close this election was, and we've never had this before. I was like, you guys are wrong, because the election of 1824 was almost identical to the election of 2000. There was a Democrat from Tennessee running against the son of a former president.
Right, and that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that we point out in this book, that a Tennessee politician running against the son of a former president, and then it becomes this incredibly controversial election that ends up going to the House. Henry Clay, the speaker, it's alleged, anyway, it's never actually proven, but it was alleged that there was a corrupt bargain in which John Quincy Adams would make Henry Clay the Secretary of State if he moved the House vote to John Quincy Adams. And that's what and that led to Andrew Jackson. He ran pretty much a 4-year presidential campaign against John Quincy Adams and managed to win in 1828.
And think about this. If this is something that I was saying back in 2000, when Al Gore came out and he conceded, then he came back and said, no, I'm not conceding. We're not going to concede. I really, truly think, had he not made the decision to not concede, but instead, if he'd come out and conceded in 2000, when he first did, if he came out and conceded, and then for the next 4 years, just had ringing in everybody's ears. You know what, guys? I won the popular vote. The way our system works is the way it works. He's going to be the president. But remember to vote Gore in 2004. And then anytime anything happened, he'd be the backseat quarterback, or the Monday morning quarterback, the backseat driver. I guess I kind of had two analogies hooked together there. Hey, what? My wife's laughing at me. But, every time something happened.
Yeah, that's probably true. I think with the recount and the lawsuits and so forth, he ended up looking sort of like a sore loser. One said he could have taken the high road.
And it completely muddied the name to the point where he wouldn't have been taken seriously. But just imagine if, any time anything happened between 2000 and 2004, you had Vote Gore in 2004 ringing in your ears. I think he would have been the president in 2004. Because it's not like people were saying, we love George W. Bush. They were just going, we really don't like John Kerry. So I think that he probably would have won. I think history would have repeated itself, but he made a terrible decision on election night in 2000 that completely changed history, in my opinion.
That's probably true. The book, Tainted by Suspicion, actually looks at 4 different scenarios. I actually really 6 different scenarios because we do throw controversial elections from 1960 and 1888 in there. But the book looks at the scenarios if the other guy did win. So it looks at President Gore and whether we would have had the Iraq War. And it also looks at, President Aaron Burr, what would have happened if the House had gone the other way. One of the more interesting things, and as I was doing this, I thought that probably the least interesting thing from this would be President Andrew Jackson 4 years early. Well, just a lot of the same stuff. Well, no, I mean, as I researched it more and as I interviewed more experts on that era, one aspect of if Andrew Jackson had actually won in 1824 rather than 1828 is that there wouldn't be a Democratic Party today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, he invented the Democratic Party.
So that is a pretty big difference, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, I mean, there would have been probably a party, maybe with a different name that had lean, populist, progressive, but I mean, that would have been a fairly big change.
Definitely. Again, visiting right now with Fred Lucas. He is the author of Tainted by Suspicion, also a White House correspondent with Daily Signal. And now, what is that when you go and cover things at the White House? I'm assuming you got to go through background checks. There's got to be a pretty daunting task to do that. Is it quite the ordeal to be able to be a White House correspondent?
Oh yeah. From that aspect, it can take actually from the front end, it takes maybe about 3 to 6 months to actually get approved for the actual White House staff. But once you have the pass, it's fairly easy to get in on a daily basis. Sort of like going through. It's much easier than going through airport security. I have to say that.
Especially lately, it seems like going through airport security is really difficult. So the book, Tainted by Suspicion, where can we find a copy of that? If maybe somebody listening is going, boy, I'd really like to read this. Where do we find a copy of this?
Yeah, you can get it on Amazon.com. You can get it on Barnes & Noble. It's on Kobo for ebook and pretty much everywhere books are sold.
Again, our guest, Fred Lucas, White House correspondent with the Daily Signal, also the author of Tainted by Suspicion. And you can also go to his website to read more, taintedbysuspicion.com. Thank you for taking some time to chat with us today here, Fred.
Oh, thanks very much.
And now, I suppose it would be wrong of me to not at least ask a little bit while we have you on the line here about the current election, because we've got this election that's going on right now. Do you think that this is going to be one for the history books as well?
Well, I think it possibly could. I've got a piece coming in for a political storm, just kind of looking at the possibility of what if this libertarian candidate, who's a team of former governors, Gary Johnson and William Weld, and they hope to maybe curious their strategies actually to try to carry a handful of very small states with low population. Or if that happens, it could conceivably, and this will be a long shot, but it could conceivably, in this whole election year, has been long shots that have actually happened. Keep that in mind. So that could conceivably deny either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump the majority of electoral votes, the 270, which I could possibly send it to the House, just like in 1824. Another, I think, a much more likely possibility also is that we might see, you've seen the polls lately where Donald Trump is beating Hillary Clinton. I think this is something that's much more likely that would be similar to the elections that I write about in Tainted by Suspicion, and that is that Donald Trump might win the popular vote and Hillary Clinton might win the Electoral College. And that's because I think Donald Trump can potentially run up the numbers in states like New York and California in ways that past Republican candidates have not been able to do. However, I don't think you could carry those states, and Hillary Clinton would probably win the electoral votes there.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Now, as we're looking at the election and where we are today, it's just been unbelievable. In Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I live, Bernie Sanders came to town. There were 4,000 people, a little over 4,000 people that showed up to see him. Bill Clinton came to town about the same time. It was either a few days before or a few days after to rally for Hillary Clinton. Guess how many people showed up for that one?
I'm thinking less.
300 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 300 people showed up. There were over 4,000 people for Bernie Sanders. There is definitely something going on, and if my last name were Clinton, I would be concerned because there are people right now that are saying she's stealing this election, and if you look at the number of delegates that she has that are super delegates, that's where she's winning, as the super delegates, which are kind of the whole backroom wink wink, here's your vote because I owe it to you kind of delegates. And I think there's some people that are going to be really upset if she doesn't pick Bernie Sanders as her running mate, at least. Do you see Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton on the ticket together?
It always seems sort of far-fetched, but I mean, if he wins, if Bernie Sanders wins California this coming Tuesday, that could be a big game changer. I mean, that could just winning a state that big could just cement in people's mind that she's a very weak, vulnerable candidate, and then at that point she'd probably either feel she has to get Bernie Sanders, or that she might try to get Elizabeth Warren, which has appealed to some of the same Bernie Sanders voters.
It's going to be a fascinating day Tuesday, and I'll be on the edge of my seat watching. And there's a bunch of different states, but the two big ones, the two biggest states as far as the delegate count, are New Jersey and California. And most likely, because of the superdelegates, most likely Hillary Clinton will have enough delegates to become the nominee. Unless Bernie Sanders really, really cleans house. The math is there for her to be. By the way, there's no math for Bernie to be. I went through and added, if he won every delegate that's left, he falls short. So unless they can convince some superdelegates to change their mind, which I think they can, it's most likely going to be Hillary Clinton. But the question then is, will it be Bernie Sanders on the ticket next to her? And I personally think that would be a good idea for her to do that.
Well, the big irony is that people thought the Republican convention was going to be this big mess, that it would be a contested convention.
Yeah.
Hillary will win on the first ballot, but it's still going to be messy, I think.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot of hollering in the convention halls, a lot of people pushing to try to shape the platform and so forth. So, yeah, the Democratic convention is going to be a bit of a mess, I think. If
Bernie Sanders is not on the top of the ballot or the bottom of the ballot, do you see him on the top of the independent ballot? And that would be a game changer in itself.
Yeah, that would be. He said he would not do that. You never know. I mean, that would be a game changer. And if he threatens to do that, if he's not on the ticket, that would put him on the ticket, because that would ensure Hillary Clinton loses.
And here's the thing: he has every right in the world, even if he said he wouldn't do it, he has every right in the world to do that if they feel that even this is tainted by suspicion. Because you look at this, to use the title of your book, but because you look at the superdelegates, that's where she's winning. They are almost neck and neck with the actual delegate count. But when you throw in the superdelegates, she's got this 300 more delegates than he does. She has 345 and he has 44, so that's where she's winning.
Right. And that's what really does upset a lot of people, is this whole superdelegate system that's in place. I mean, Donald Trump did a lot of accusing the Republican system of being rigged before he had the nominations locked up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Democratic system really is. I mean, they have a system in place. It was put in place post-McGovern because they didn't want another McGovern nomination, and so that was something that they did. Thinking the establishment did, thinking they could ensure that they get a suitable nominee, and usually they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
This time it looks like something they might, a card they have to play to make sure Hillary's in there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think Tuesday will be a very telling day as to what's going to happen beyond Tuesday. So it'll be interesting. As I've been saying, it's the beginning of the end, because we're about done with this, but it's also kind of the beginning of the new beginning, too. So Tuesday's going to be an interesting day. We'll just put it that way. Well, Fred, thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for joining us here on PoliticalStorm.com.
All right, thanks for having me on.
And we'll send folks out to see to get a copy of your book. We'll send them to the website taintedbysuspicion.com, and I'm going to throw a link in my podcast as well, so you can just click on that link. It'll take you right there. Again, it's Tainted by Suspicion. That is the book, and it's from Fred Lucas. Again, the website, taintedbysuspicion.com. For PoliticalStorm.com, I'm John Small.